guys, it's Jason here with Tall Guy Photography. I actually received a suggestion on a tutorial to do with Photoshop utilizing different blending techniques. So today's lesson will be how to take this image and digitally blend them so you have a nice even exposure. Um, so before I start, I want to point out that this person, Serge Ramelli, you can find him on YouTube, is a extreme wealth of information. He has he must have at least 100 or more tutorials on Photoshop and Lightroom and all other programs, HDR programs, and basically he goes over all these different techniques. And if you sign up for his newsletter on his website, he'll give you his raw files for you to follow along. I would say 99% of the information I had, or the knowledge I've gotten on how to use Lightroom and Photoshop, are from his website and his lessons. So anytime anybody has a question, I always refer them to his website because it's an extreme wealth of knowledge. But anyways, we're going to get started here. So basically, I took one image. You see the foreground element here is nice and exposed properly. But the problem with that is the sky is blown out. Really, there's no details in the sky, and it's not really usable in this state. So what I then did, I was on a tripod, took that picture, and then I took another picture at a different exposure so that I could properly expose to the sky. And then I will blend them together in Photoshop to create one nice usable image. So first of all, I want to retouch each image. For this one, maybe open up the shadows a little bit. I'm not really going to mess with the white points. I'm going to drop down the blacks, increase the vibrance, maybe warm it up a little bit, a little more magenta. And then we're going to go down, we'll sharpen the image, we'll mask it off. So basically, if you remember from my last tutorial, anything that is black will not be sharpened. So I do not want to sharpen the sky. I don't want to have any kind of graininess in the sky. So I did that, and can enable profile corrections and chromatic aberrations. So now that that's done, I can actually go over here and I'm going to retouch this one here now, and I'm looking more at the sky. So I'm not really too concerned about the dark foreground because we're going to fix that in Photoshop. For the sky, I can drop down the highlights a little bit to bring some more details into the sky. Increase my white points a little bit, my black points, increase the vibrance. I am going to add a graduated filter, and I'm going to drop the exposure. So if I'm going kind of fast through this, it's because my last video was on how I retouch my images, and this one I want to kind of get to the point of the video where I show you how to blend it in Photoshop. So bear with me. Okay, so I have two images, and I think we're all set. So I'm going to select both images. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Edit in, Open in Layers, Open as Layers in Photoshop. And then what it's going to do, it'll load both of those images into layers, each into their own layer. And again, I shot this in RAW format, so it kind of gives you a lot more flexibility with editing. Okay. So what we have here now is the overexposed sky is on top of the properly exposed sky. So what I want to do is I want to leave the foreground element but display the properly exposed sky. So the way you do that is use layer masks. The way layer masks work is if I just click on this, it'll put a white layer mask on, meaning nothing's been done to the image. But if I were to paint with a brush, with a black brush, it actually cuts away the layer mask and it starts exposing what's underneath, which is the properly exposed sky. So keep doing that, and that's one way to get the blending. If I delete the layer mask, if I were to hold Alt and click on layer mask, basically it masks off everything on the top, only showing the bottom. And then if I were to paint in white, it would start bringing back, it would basically do the same as the other method I showed you. So it really, it's whatever your preference is. So what I'm doing, if it's a black layer mask, you paint in white. If it's a white layer mask, you paint black to cut away the mask. I'm currently at like a low opacity and flow, so that's, I prefer to work that way instead of having like 100% and have it, I don't know, you see your brush strokes more, and I'm not a fan. So I'm going to switch back to black here. I'm going to keep painting on the sky a little bit. And there you have it. That is digital blending. It is really not a hard process. The other method you can do instead of using the brush technique, so I'm going to put a regular white layer mask on. You can actually use, this is my typical preferred method, is to use the gradient tool in Photoshop. So since it's a white layer mask, I want to paint in black, and I want to select the foreground to transparent gradient up here. So basically it's going to do kind of a gradient, just like it says. It's going to mask out in more of a transition, which gives you a pretty good natural look. And so that, I really enjoy that, the way that looks. The cool thing with masking is, this has gotten a little darker because of the gradient. I could basically switch over to back to white with a brush, and then I could just kind of brush in little specific areas that I want to brighten up the image or whatever. If you hold the Alt button and right click, you can resize your brush. There's all kinds of shortcuts with Photoshop that are very useful to learn. But yeah, that is pretty much it. From this point, you can actually select both of your layers, right click and go to merge layers. That puts it all into one image. And then you can actually play around with it because this is still raw file. You can go into camera raw filter, which is essentially what you're getting like in Photoshop or in Lightroom. You can do it in Photoshop too, so you can make other tweaks. You can change your white balance. I kind of like another graduated filter for the sky, so I can drop that. That's a little nuts there, so put this all back by double clicking it kind of puts it back to where it started. And we're going to just darken down that sky a little bit more. And we're going to maybe make it a little bit blue. I'm a fan of the saturated colors. You know, you can go way too far with the saturation, but I just like a nice colorful image. One last thing I want to do, because this is one of my pet peeves, is the horizon is not straight, and I don't know if I have OCD or what, but it really bothers me when the horizon is not straight. So that's a real easy fix. If you hit the C key on your keyboard, that'll bring up your crop window. You can click on this little ruler for straighten. Basically, just draw along the horizon, and then it'll straighten, and there you have it. Straight horizon, and a digitally blended image that gives you the best of both worlds. Sometimes what happens is if you have a underexposed foreground and then you try to boost the shadows, depending on your camera, if it doesn't, if it's like a more entry-level camera, sometimes they lack the dynamic range and you introduce a lot of noise into your image. So it's sometimes better to do two separate exposures, and then digitally blend them together in Photoshop. That way you get no noise. It's a really nice effect, and I've had a lot of good luck with it when I've utilized this technique. I hope this helped. Let me know if there's something you want me to spend more time on, but this is a very basic technique that I use quite often in my retouching, and I've found it very helpful. In the coming week or so, I'm hoping to do another tutorial where I take this image, which is actually one of Serge Ramelli's images I downloaded, and basically he takes this otherwise boring picture and actually takes a separate photo that he had of clouds and makes a composite image to basically add the clouds in the sky and replace it, so it makes it a little bit more interesting. It's a helpful technique when you have like a really overexposed sky, like a real white sky. So I'll go over that hopefully in my next video. Let me know if this digital blending video was helpful, and I look forward to your comments. Until next time, talk to you later.